My name is Nikki Mullowney, and I am a grateful, recovered drug addict and alcoholic. We already went over resentment inventory and fear inventory, so naturally it's time to talk about sex conduct. So when we start to look at the sex conduct inventory, a lot of times there is this culture and this idea that we need to be abstinent and celibate, and we need to just it turns into like this purity culture thing, and it's just not true. The big book even talks about that, right? It's like, hey, we know that there's a lot of people who are going to go really crazy and get really weird about this sex stuff. And the big book says that's not what we are trying to do here necessarily. We are just trying to get clear on how we cause harm, right? The big theme through all of the inventories is getting clear on how I cause harm, how I show up selfishly, dishonestly, fear-driven, how I cause harm, right? So that I can show up in a better way, so that I can navigate this world in a way that is not harmful to myself and others. I think that's a pretty reasonable goal for all of us. So we're going to simplify this as much as physically possible. It says in the book that most of us need an overhauling there in regards to sex conduct, relationship conduct, romantic conduct, whatever it is that your deal is. Maybe you aren't really sex driven, but you've had a lot of romantic and emotional affairs and relationships that you need to look at. One of the things that I see often is people being told to put family members on sex conduct. That seems weird to me personally. I've been told to do that. I don't do that anymore, and I don't ask anybody to do that because it's very specific in the book of what the goal is. And family and friendships and all that stuff will go on my resentment inventory. I think that the reason why people even suggest that is if someone says that they really don't have any resentments towards these people, and we're just trying to see really the fourth column. So if that is the case, fine. Let's say you have 0 resentments against your mom, which is just fake news, right? Then just leave the second column blank and just look at how you're selfish, self-seeking, dishonest, and afraid, right? For this stuff, let's get clear on what sex conduct actually looks like. So on page 69, giggity, it gives us the instructions on how to do it. So for this one, I don't put it in columns. I just list the questions as they come in the book. And it starts with where had we reviewed our own conduct over the years past? Where had we been selfish? Right, so we're just going to break this down one at a time. So first I'm going to put who, and typically I'll put like what our relationship was, just to get clear for my 5th step. When I'm reading all of this information to another human who's going to help me to get connected and clear and all that good stuff, right? So I'm going to look at how I was selfish. So let's say it's my ex, and I'm going to use an example that is easy for me to manipulate people into seeing me as the victim, including myself. So let's say her name is Sally. I don't know why that's always the name that I go to. I don't know any Sallys. So her name is Sally, right? And when I'm thinking for myself, right, just a little overview of the entirety of our relationship. We used drugs together. We started using together. We've known each other since we were teenagers. We've moved around together to different states. We were on and off again, always best friends. We would fight for each other. We would, do all sorts of stuff for each other to prove our loyalty. Here's a little bonus part is she got drunk and slept with my dad. That's a good one, right? Good example, because everyone's like, oh my God, you can't be at fault here. That's terrible. I know, right? No wonder why you relapsed. I know, right? Plot twist. It's not why I relapsed. It was a really good excuse, but it's not why. So, with all that being said, now I'm going to look at selfish. So how did I show up selfishly? I have to actually dig deep and be honest with myself because no one else can give me the answers because they weren't there. Other people can give me ideas and examples from their own experience, but they cannot give me my own truth. right? So for me, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to pray and I'm going to get quiet. I'm going to meditate. I'm going to do some real stuff so that I can get more clear on what's actually going on outside of just my perspective and my perception, because that is part of the selfishness, right? Is when I'm only looking at things through my lens and I'm not looking at how other things are operating around me. That in and of itself is selfish, right? So selfish, believing that I can save her, right? I would do things like I would steal her drugs and act like it was to help her, and I would punish her and judge her for using if I was sober at the time. But if I was using with her, fair game. So I'm a huge hypocrite. I blamed her for me self-harming, for me hurting other people, and for me using drugs and drinking into blackouts. I believed that I am smarter than her. I believe that I am better than her. I relied on her for my own wholeness, which places a very big burden on another human. If you're okay, I'm okay, right? All this like codependency stuff. I would make her feel like it was her fault when I was internally suffering, which is just not true. Because my internal condition cannot and is not contingent on other humans. So I'm not going to sit here and go through all these millions and billions of examples. I'm going to keep it pushing. Dishonest. Believing that her relapse is the cause of my relapse. Justifying my character assassinating of her. Dishonest. Believing that she's the reason why I'm a drug addict. And these things are going to overlap, right? So my selfish and my dishonest a lot of times look similar. Believing that I can fix her or save her. Believing that I have any kind of power over her internal condition and her disease of addiction. Dishonest. Lying to her about where I was, who I was with, all that fun stuff. Lying to her about how much dope I had, so I didn't have to share it. Lying to her about how I got the money. Lying to other people about our relationship. Lying to other people about her sobriety, right? Because it's not just with her. How did I show up in regards to this relationship in the world, period, right? Because I hurt and I was selfish and caused a lot of harm to a lot of people using this as a justification. So I'm going to look a little bit outward too. The next question is inconsiderate. How was I inconsiderate to her and other people in regards to this relationship? I am not going to say anything about how she showed up, because that has nothing to do with this. Looking at her actions will never resolve my own internal condition. So how was I inconsiderate? I was inconsiderate of her boyfriends that she cheated on with me. I was inconsiderate of her family, who didn't know if she was alive or dead, who didn't know if she was sober or not. And I didn't care. I was inconsiderate to our friends that we blew off, that we would say that we would show up and we wouldn't, that we would go to them and use them for dope. I would go and use them for dope, for money, for alcohol, for a ride, whatever the case may be. I was inconsiderate to my family and my parents, doing drugs in their house, feeling justified, disappearing, not answering the phone calls or the text messages or whatever the case may be. I was inconsiderate when I would completely self-destruct and show it to her and say, see, look what you've done to me. That is some psychological abuse. I thought that I was abused, right? I thought that she was the villain. I was the good guy. She was the bad guy. And I got everyone else to see that too. I was inconsiderate to her when I convinced other people that she is the bad guy. When I'm doing all the same stuff, it just looks a little bit different because our methods are different, right? Moving on. Whom did we hurt? I hurt her. I hurt her mom. I hurt her dad. I hurt her sister and her brothers. I hurt our friends. I hurt my family, right? Because it's not just in this relationship. How I showed up in this relationship, who did I affect? I affected everybody I came in contact with. I hurt our teachers in high school who watched us, but, I'm looking at how I showed up, right? Watched this relationship and were so concerned. And I didn't listen to a damn word they said. I would go and I would trauma dump on them and then take no solution. And with how people are dying from this disease, God knows if they were scared that they weren't going to see me the next day. Going back to dishonest, I'm not hurting anybody but myself. No one has a right to have an opinion about how I show up in this relationship. Oof! Okay, I don't want to backtrack too much. So, next. Did we unjustifiably arouse jealousy, suspicion, or bitterness? Unjustifiably there is a specific term, right? So, jealousy. I can literally, there are some instances where I am just being a human and literally not doing anything wrong, but because I'm having a conversation with someone that's completely innocent and platonic, this person is seething in jealousy and thinks I'm doing something wrong. I'm not necessarily going to write that down. However, what I am going to write down is if I know that you're watching and I know that you're insecure about this person, so I'm having this really long flirty conversation with them to get you jealous. That would go under unjustifiably arousing jealousy. If I am doing that thing, right, where I'm on my phone, I'm smiling, and you're like, oh, what? Oh, nothing, don't worry about it. I'm doing it on purpose. It's very specific, it's on purpose. Write that down. If I am like bringing a lot of times it's so purposeful. I'm taking my phone and bringing it here. I'm posting things on Facebook and tagging people to make this person feel insecure and jealous. So suspicion looks very similar. I'm deleting text messages. I'm changing my PIN on my phone. I am going into other rooms to have conversations. I'm doing this all purposefully or because I'm actually doing something wrong, right? Whether it's just to create a scene to make you think that something's happening, or I actually am that I'm trying to hide and I'm just doing a bad job because I actually either I'm just like stupid and unaware, or I want you to feel a type of way about it, right? And then bitterness. So an example that I can think of for bitterness is when we would have conversations and or situations that's very private. And then I go to people who are not safe people to talk to, that it's going to stay between us. I go to people that she doesn't like. I go to people that have big mouths, and I go and I vent about her to them. And I go and I make a scene, and I go and I tell her private business, or I tell her secrets, right? She's bitter about that. Rightfully so. Where were we at fault? I was spiteful. I would self-destruct, I would self-harm, I would relapse, and blame her for my actions and my reactions and my responses to life. I was passive-aggressive. I wouldn't get honest. I lied to therapists. I lied to my friends about what was really happening because I didn't want honest feedback because I was unwilling to do anything different. I was at fault when I would buy her drugs when I was using, and I would damn her and judge her and make her feel like shit when I decided it was time to be sober. I would blame her when it wasn't hers to bear. I blamed her for my decisions. That's not fair. I believe that I'm this savior, this protector, this provider, and tried to convince her of the same thing. I was spiteful and explosive. I played the victim. What should we have done instead? So a lot of times we like to do this thing where it's like, well, I shouldn't have been in the relationship in the first place. Period. Done. Move on. Let's do my fists out. But that's such a cop-out. Obviously, like that could be an option, but if I just did that for everything that I look back on, I was like, well, I just should not have done that in the first place. I'm not going to grow. I'm not going to gain a bigger understanding of how I show up and how I can react differently. Because the truth is in the future, I might end up in a similar situation, right? And just avoiding it won't do the trick, because how do I know what it's going to unfold into. No, what I need to know is, if this happens again and I end up in the same spot, how can I navigate it better? How can I show up differently, right? Now I'm just going to look back on all these different things and look at how I can show up better. What I could have done instead. I could have taken responsibility for my actions. I could have not judged her for doing the same shit that I did when it was convenient for me. I could have looked at my own hypocrisy. I could have allowed others to help. I could have told the truth about our using and about what was going on and about our suffering, so that somebody who could actually help us could help us. I could have understood that I am not God and I cannot save or fix or protect anybody. I could have not been a homewrecker, and when she had boyfriends, not go in and decide, no, you should be with me. Who do I think I am? Trying to convince somebody to love me in a specific way, in a certain way. Here's a fun one. So here's this one time, I bought her a phone. This was back in the day when smartphones were like a big deal, and we got her a cool kid phone, is what we called it. It was the newest one, and she was so excited about it. I was so excited about it because I was able to buy it with my first job, and I found out she was talking to this guy. So instead of being assertive, instead of having communication, I was so angry and so spiteful and so controlling. Here's what I did. We lived in the same house, but in different rooms, and she was in her room. So I waited till she fell asleep, and then I turned off all the lights. I had my phone with my little flashlight, and I army crawled into her room, got her phone off of the charger, army crawled out of the room, took it off. I was like, how can I break this phone without her knowing that I did it? Because she needs to think that I am innocent and I am good and I'm a protector and I'm a provider and I'm not fucking crazy. But I am crazy, but she can't know that, right? So I'm like, ooh, I got it. So I take off the back of the phone, exposing the battery. I take out the battery. I spit in it. And I put the battery back in, put the phone back together, army crawl back in, plug it back into the charger, army crawl back out. Ugh. So the next day, she's trying to use her phone, and she's like, I don't know what's wrong with it. I'm like, maybe you should take better care of your stuff. Yikes! Oh! How did I believe that I wasn't abusive? How did I believe that I wasn't manipulative and controlling? Right? And it's like, again, like I've talked about in the other videos, I'm not sitting here and shaming myself and judging myself and what a piece of shit I am. I'm just now aware of what I am capable of, right? Those things were not beneficial. They did not serve her. They did not serve me. And I was delusional about how self-sacrificing and kind and modest and humble I was. I confused humility for self-loathing and self-pity. They're not the same thing, right? So when I'm able to actually write that stuff down and get really clear, my face is hot from saying that out loud. But I've told this story a million times because I do not regret my past nor wish to shut the door on it. And if that story can help you to see some truth about your life, rock on, man. That's what this whole thing is about. That's what this whole program and fellowship is about, man. I'm going to tell you my darkness so that you can get in touch with yours and embrace that darkness, man. It's okay, right? I'm not a bad human. I just did some shitty things. It says we got this down on paper and we looked at it. Just to go back to like the purity culture thing and believing that like you need to be celibate and, you know, not have sex until marriage and all this stuff. It says very clearly, we've remembered always that our sex powers were God-given and therefore good, neither to be used lightly or selfishly, nor to be despised or loathed. This is about being clear so I don't cause harm. I cause a lot of harm to a lot of people. I have used people. I always said like, oh, everyone leaves me and cheats on me and it's always, you know, I'm not lovable. Meanwhile, I've ghosted so many people. I've used so many people for validation and then just kept it pushing, right? I've talked to this person and as soon as this person starts talking to me again, I'm like, oh, go away. You know what? I have to be clear on that stuff so that I can be clear on how to move forward and how to do things differently. A lot of times we use this part of the book against ourselves too, because it says God alone can judge our sex situation. So no one's the arbiter of our sex conduct. So I've done that. I've literally done that, right? Where I'm in this really weird relationship, red flags all over the place. Everyone's like, Nick, you're going to relapse over this. You're going to get hot. Like, you got to stop. I'm like, hey. You're not the arbiter of my sex conduct. I've counseled with others, but you're not going to tell me what to do. When there are people around me, they're telling me that I am causing harm and that what I'm doing is not aligning with spiritual principles, and I am unwilling to listen, then I am unteachable and I am in a very shaky place. My experience tells me that. The book also says, suppose we fall short of the chosen ideal and stumble. Does that mean that we're going to get drunk? Some people tell us so, but this is only a half truth. So with that, one of the biggest things here is I am going to fuck up. I am going to make mistakes, right? That doesn't mean I'm going to get loaded. But if you keep going, it says if we are not sorry and our conduct continues to harm others, we are quite sure to drink. We are not theorizing. These are facts out of our experience. Those are facts out of my experience. I've done the same thing over and over and over and over and over, hurting other people, being dishonest, being selfish, being manipulative, and I got loaded every time. Right? I don't get to go and make amends to somebody and then go and continue the behavior and wonder why I feel so gross inside. Amends are not about saying you're sorry. They're about acknowledge of wrongdoing and a commitment not to repeat the behavior. If I continue to repeat the behavior and I get loaded, I can't say it's because the stuff didn't work. It's because I'm not doing it. Right? When I'm lined up with spiritual principles and I'm spiritually fit, I don't cause harm to people. And when I do, I am willing to go back and admit it and own it, and take responsibility and try to make it right. That's what this whole deal is about. Can I take ownership? Can I admit when I'm wrong? And can I try to show up as a better human? Can I try to show up more honestly and more loving and more considerate? If so, then that's it. Anyway, that's what I got on sex conduct. That's all the inventory stuff we have for step 4. If you like this, please feel free to share it, like and subscribe to the channel. We also have guided meditations for beginners. I will continue to post things like this if people benefit from it. So let me know what you think. Please please comment anything else that you would like to hear discussed or you want to talk about, and I would love the feedback. Remember, we do recover.